Highlight, we have no fire drill planned tonight, so if there is a fire alarm, please make your way out of the building in a calm and orderly fashion as guided by staff. People with mobility issues should gather in the foyer on the right-hand side as you leave the Mancroft room near to the balustrade where assistance will be provided. Toilets are at the far end of the corridors either side of the council chamber, ladies to the right as you leave and gents to the left. The meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. So first of all, apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Hadder. Second item, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 3, public questions and petitions. There have been no public questions or petitions. Questions to Cabinet members. There have been no questions received. So we move on to the minutes. Can we confirm that these are an accurate record of the meeting on the 2nd of April, please? Need a proposer and I'll propose it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hampton. All those in favour? Agreed. Thank you. So now we're moving on to item 6, to seek the adoption of a corporate debt strategy and approve the corporate debt policy for Norwich City Council. Could I ask, please, Councillor Harper to move the report?
Thank you, Chair. So we're being asked to adopt a corporate debt strategy and approve a corporate debt policy for the Council. This follows on from previous work completed by the Financial Inclusion team in producing a non-commercial debt policy. There was no commercial debt policy produced at that time. Following on from COVID and the continuing cost of living crisis where recovery of debt was largely halted, Council took a softer approach to restarting recovery. And whilst at this time it was seen as the right approach, it has led to an increased debt paid to the Council. A debt project has been undertaken looking across all service areas responsible for raising taxes and charges and recovering debt. The project firstly identified the current processes for recovering debts, analysing them and identifying areas for improvement. Phase 2 is nearing conclusion, and the strategy and the policy are the first steps to formalising how we want to proceed for better service. So it's fair to say that service areas have been largely working on their own, concentrating on their own recovery processes and entering into individual supplier contracts. This in itself led to inconsistencies in approach for customers. With the continuation of the debt project, service areas are already supporting and working more closely together, sharing knowledge, ideas and giving confidence to those new to debt collection. It needs to be emphasised that debt recovery options differ depending on the type of debt, and the strategy and policy places emphasis on acting fairly and taking into account a debtor's circumstances, and I think that's a very important point. Within the papers, there's also a vulnerability framework which sits alongside a number of existing policies such as council tax hardship relief and our approach to, which underpins our approach to supporting residents at times of financial hardship and other crises. The strategy before you supports a positive approach to debt collection, building on previous policies, and gives a clear steer to officers as to expectations in this regard. This and the corporate debt policy included in the papers provides a much more joined up approach whilst focusing on the debtor as an individual. By working together more closely with the Financial Inclusion Consortium to reach out to debtors at an early stage, outcomes for residents and businesses should be improved.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harper. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jones? Thank you. Does any Cabinet member wish to speak? No? Okay. I'll move to questions from political group leaders that have been sent in advance. Councillor Catt, would you please ask your question?
Thank you for the explanation, Councillor Harper. In the past, I think myself and some other colleagues have worked with residents, often people that have some complex vulnerabilities, and they've had some nasty experiences with enforcement agents, sometimes in situations where that issue could perhaps have been resolved through like clearer communication. Should a success measure for this strategy kind of be the mental health of customers? And can you give a bit more detail about how that is going to be incorporated into the strategy and delivered?
So the strategy aims to address debt at an early stage, working more closely with the Financial Inclusion Consortium to encourage those in debt to reach out sooner for help and support. No one wants to see enforcement action taken, but where a debtor has not made any attempts to deal with their debts, it's unfortunate that that process is one route that has to be considered. Enforcement agents trained to identify vulnerable debtors, and these cases are sent to their welfare teams to support the debtor or return to the council. We can certainly monitor data from our enforcement agents to ascertain how many cases are referred on to these support mechanisms and provide assurance that positive outcomes are achieved for those residents who are experiencing difficulties.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7 is the Corporate Risk Register for 2024-25, Quarter 4. May I again ask Councillor Harper, please, to move the report.
Thank you. I'm not planning on saying that much about this, but this report provides an update for the Council's Corporate Risk Register based on the position for Quarter 4 of the financial year up to 31st of March 2025. The report asks us to note the identified risks and the direction of travel for each risk. The register is shown at Appendix A, and there's a separate report included on the exempts agenda. The position at the end of Quarter 3 up to the 31st of December was reported to Cabinet in February. There haven't been any significant changes to the Council's overall risk profile at the end of this quarter. And in the exempt report, the Council split corporate risk 25 to reflect the different governance and resilience risk profiles, which results in one additional corporate risk, which is listed as corporate risk 34. The environment in which the Council operates remains relatively high risk, as the financial environment is challenging both in terms of economic and funding position, and as a result the corporate risk register will continue to be monitored and progress reported to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jones, thank you. Does any Cabinet member wish to speak? Councillor Jones.
I know this is going to come up in a question, but I suppose I just wanted to, given that repairs and maintenance is listed in there and it's my portfolio area, whilst it remains at 60 in risk register, I think what is reflected is the significant work that's going on and the journey that service area is on and the improvement plans in place. And I think in terms of what customers experience, we are starting to see improvements in that and the feedback I'm getting. And I hope that will start to be reflected soon within the risk register. But I think there's a whole story that sits behind things when they appear here. And I think we're seeing a snapshot. And I think it's there. I think having it there, we take that incredibly seriously as an organisation. I know I do as a portfolio holder, and I'm looking forward to being able to share data around repairs with all councillors, because I think this is something we should have more information on and deeper oversight of. And I think that's something going forward, that understanding what underpins that service improvement plan is something I think councillors will be very pleased to see and to understand in greater detail.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Does any other Cabinet member wish to contribute? No. In that case, I'll move to questions from political group leaders that have been sent in advance. Councillor Catt, would you please ask your question?
Thank you. Failure to meet performance and service improvement requirements for repairs and maintenance is currently one of our highest risks. I do acknowledge there is a much bigger picture that does sit behind that. One of the likely impacts of failure in that area is legal challenges. Do we know how many tenants are currently pursuing legal action against the council and how many have gone to court?
Councillor Jones.
Yep, I'm happy to answer that. So the council currently has 143 active legal disrepair claims, of which 7 are progressing to court. And please note, we're not currently, don't currently have court dates for these settlements, the status could change. Not all of the 143 active legal disrepair claims will proceed to court, and we will explore other avenues such as dispute resolution, small claims court, fast tracking. In some cases, claims are also dropped. We are currently reviewing our disrepair process following an appointment of disrepair manager in November 2024 and are working alongside MP Law to review our active cases. We received 86 disrepair cases in 24-25. To compare levels of disrepair, we look at benchmarking information. Councils with the fewest cases are reporting 3 cases per 1,000 properties. Those with most cases performing in the lowest quartile are reporting 12 per 1,000 properties performance. Norwich falls in the median area of performance, which is 6 cases per 1,000 properties. Now, to me, that's still too high, and I'll happily own that as a portfolio holder, but I think, such as the appointment of disrepair manager, that's all part of the process that we're on, and changing and improving a service area as large as housing is a slow process, but a process that we are committed to. And I think we're seeing some early green shoots from that and seeing some positive work. I think you've had an opportunity to come across some of the improvement work, such as the work around damp and mould, which I believe you were able to attend the briefing on, and we're working on it as sort of specific areas of identifying where those needs are and then addressing those, and look forward to sharing more of the improvement work as those plans are in a position where they're ready to share. But the work is ongoing and they're being developed, and they work across all areas of property services.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I will now move that we exclude the press and public from the meeting during the consideration of items on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as specified in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, or it being confidential for the purposes of Section 100A2 of that Act. Do I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Giles, thank you. We'll now move to a vote on excluding the press and public for this item. All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed unanimously. I'll wait for Leonie to let me know that we...
We're now back on, Chair.
So we'll now vote on this item. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Item 8 is motion 11D, local government pay, which was referred to us from full council. Could I ask Councillor Fox to come forward and introduce the motion? You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Chair. In February, I presented this motion to recognise and support the staff who keep this council and our city running. It was deferred to Cabinet, and today I'm again asking Cabinet to do the right thing. Since 2010, local government has faced over a 50% cut in central funding, and Norwich City Council has been forced to do more with less year after year. Across the country, 900,000 local government jobs have been lost since 2010, and those who remain face rising workloads and largely stagnant wages. Yet our staff stepped up during austerity, a pandemic, and now a cost of living crisis. They've kept services going when many would have walked away, and for that they deserve better. The average local government salary is now nearly £9,000 below the average wage, UK average wage, and we've heard of council workers relying on food banks. This is a national disgrace and a local reality. We're often told there's no money, but fair pay isn't a luxury, it's an investment. Some Norwich City Council staff up to grade 5 are eligible for universal credit. A proper wage increase would mean fewer staff relying on benefits, better mental and physical health, and consequently higher productivity and lower turnover. The motion doesn't call on Norwich City Council to fund the pay claim, it calls on central government to do its part, to fund councils properly and to show the same loyalty to staff that staff have shown to the public. Unison reports that under the Tories, NJC pay rise was £1,925 per grade. Last year, under Labour, it was £1,290. This year, staff are being offered just 3.2%, which will work to less again for many. Labour now risks delivering lower pay rises than the Conservatives, and that's not a good look. And as a Labour Cabinet, you have an opportunity to act on that optic.
Thank you.
Support on this motion is about fairness, and I hope that you'll do the right thing.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Could I ask, please, Councillor Harper to respond?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Chair. I think on this side, many of us, I think we share the sentiment of this motion. When it came to council, Councillor Kendrick proposed remitting this to Cabinet on the grounds that pay negotiations had yet to conclude, and I think we find ourselves in much a similar situation today. And whilst we're incredibly supportive of the vast majority of this motion, I think whilst members are considering the offer before them, it would be wrong for us to kind of prejudice that ballot. So what I'm proposing is that we consider this at the July meeting rather than today. And in the meantime, perhaps Councillor Padder, and again, this sort of falls primarily in her brief, but Councillor Padder and I would be happy to meet with Councillor Fox to see if we can reach agreement over the resolution so that we can achieve a situation where there's cross-party support for this.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Harper. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Jones. And I think it's clear that the vast bulk of this, the sentiment we agree with, and we greatly value our staff, and we want to do everything we reasonably can to ensure that they're well remunerated and they have good terms and good conditions. And I think the points that were made about the dedication and professionalism of our staff, I think we would all stand foursquare behind that. It's clear on a daily basis. Would any other Cabinet member care to comment? No? Okay, well, in that case, we'll now move to a vote. So the proposal is to defer until July, and in the meantime, for Councillor Padder and Councillor Harper to meet with the proposal of the motion to see whether or not it's possible for us to come to a mutual agreement over the way forward.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
all right. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending, Councillor Fox.
Thank you.
Item 9, Parks and Green Spaces Strategy for Norwich. Could I ask Councillor Hampton to move the report, please?
Yes, thank you. And I'm really pleased to today be bringing forward this Council's first Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which sets out a vision for this area for the next 10 years, so through to 2035. As a council, we manage a total of 101 parks, gardens and green spaces, as well as 2 cemeteries, 18 allotments, 81 playgrounds and several outdoor sports facilities. This is a strategy that creates a vision for how we continue to maintain, enhance and connect these spaces, and it contains a comprehensive set of actions to deliver this. We know that parks and open spaces are hugely valued by residents across the city, anecdotally as councillors, and we know that whenever we engage with residents about their priorities citywide and what matters to them, such as conversations held when we developed the We Are Norwich community-led plan, as well as every year in the budget setting process, that parks frequently comes up as one of the most universally valued services or amenities that we provide as a council. These are spaces that contribute positively to people's physical and mental health and well-being by providing opportunity for sport, leisure, exercise, culture and socialising, as well as providing access to nature and playing a really important role in responding to the climate and ecological emergencies. In light of this and all the feedback we received, its importance was duly reflected in the community-led plan, which contains the aspiration that we will, quote, protect and enhance our outstanding parks, green and blue spaces and our natural environment so they are vibrant and accessible to everyone and places where wildlife thrives. And it's this aspiration that the Parks and Green Spaces strategy has been developed to follow on from. As a council, we do already have a strong and proud track record of managing parks and green spaces to the highest standards, which is especially evident by our 6 Green Flag award-winning spaces, which are now Higham, Eton, Waterloo, Jenny Lynn Parks and Mousehold Heath and Kent's Heights, which is a really great achievement to be up to 6. And likewise, we've also had some notable successes when it comes to attracting funding opportunities. For example, recently we were able to announce that we've successfully been awarded £216,000 from the National Lottery Heritage Fund towards a big project focused on improving 22 of our most significant and historic parks, cemeteries, river corridors and other spaces for nature. But at the same time, we recognise there's always more that can be done and a need to look strategically at how we maximise resource to make sure parks across the city are serving communities as best they can. This strategy consolidates a lot of that good work that has already been happening and builds on it further to provide a framework for managing and improving our parks and green spaces into the future. It aims to ensure that they are enhancing the quality of the city environment, promoting civic pride and social inclusion, and meeting the needs of residents now and in the future. It contains a list of priorities and actions which underpin the aims, and they're on page 17 of the strategy itself, and there are 48 listed, so I'm not going to go through them all, but they're all practical, tangible actions with appropriate timescales allocated to them, which will move the strategy forward. Another thing the paper before us today outlines, and which I'd like to highlight, is the extensive consultation process that was carried out to support development of the strategy, and to make sure we can feed views from stakeholders, councillors and the public into it to shape it. It was a process essentially kicked off back in, I think, was it November 2023, when there was a away day with over 120 delegates from 60 organisations, ranging from friends groups, residents associations, BID, Norfolk Wildlife Trust, County Council and many more. We've had separate discussions with funding organisations such as the Heritage Fund, Greater Norwich Growth Board. There was an all-day site visit with Historic England, and officers and staff from across the council and different departments were consulted. In its early form, the strategy came to scrutiny in March last year, where some really constructive recommendations were made, and subsequently we were able to incorporate each of these into the strategy. Came back to scrutiny in final form last month, and again we had a really good discussion, but this time there were no further recommendations. We had it here before at Cabinet in October, so we could agree that it could move forward to public consultation, and that commenced from November last year through to January of this year. A summary of the public consultation responses were appended at the end of the report. A few key themes that came out included around safety and security, the need to prioritise maintenance and upkeep, enhancing and promoting biodiversity, accessibility and inclusion, community and engagement, and addressing user conflicts, especially with regards to dogs. After that consultation, a number of revisions have been made to get to this draft or final version, hopefully, that we have in front of us, picking up these themes, as I say, the scrutiny recommendations and other comments made. So, for example, it now includes an introduction to how this strategy interacts with other important strategies and policies that there are synergies with, in particular our existing biodiversity strategy and the Greater Norwich Green Infrastructure Strategy. And it also explains in more detail the rationale behind the strategic green space hierarchy, which is in the strategy on page 14. Just to go a little bit further to remove any implication that just because a space isn't listed that it will be ignored, downgraded, disposed of. This is absolutely not the case. What the hierarchy does do and is there for is to reflect that parks that are, say, bigger, historic, have more facilities and serve a wider community are going to need a certain amount of resource to maintain and enhance compared to perhaps smaller local parks which don't have those facilities and that level of need. That doesn't mean that these smaller spaces don't have value and will just be ignored. But overall, I'm really proud to be bringing forward this strategy today, and I think it encapsulates a lot of what this Labour administration stands for, providing high public, good quality spaces and facilities that can be accessed by all and which promote social and environmental benefits hand in hand. So just to thank the officers who've been involved in putting the strategy together, all the engagement surrounding it as well. Over the past couple of years, it's been a very thorough process. Also, Councillor Giles, actually, who kicked this off when it was in his portfolio and oversaw some of those very key steps around consulting with stakeholders and the public. But otherwise, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Kidman. Thank you. Does any Cabinet member wish to speak on this item? No? Okay, so I'll move to questions from political group leaders that have been sent in advance. Councillor Catt, would you please ask your question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hampton and Councillor Giles. This is a really detailed strategy and lots of work has gone into it, and I think members from my group really appreciate the engagement that was done over such a long process. It was really good. In relation to Slowbottom Park, I think everyone is happy that we're getting a large amount of funding from the government for that. But many residents have raised concerns with me over the past year that previously free activity is going to be reduced by activities that will need to be paid for, and there is a worry among some people that the park will mainly benefit those like driving into Malcroft rather than some of the residents of the area itself. And I just wondered what some of the provisions are going to be for addressing some of those concerns in the plans for the park, and it'd be great to bring everyone along with it because it is such a it's so good to get that level of funding in.
Yeah, thank you for your comments about the strategy. It's really glad to hear that process was valued by Green Party as well. The question itself isn't so much about the strategy or the item that's on the agenda. I'll pass it over to Councillor Harper to answer, given it strays into major projects and her area, if that's okay, Carly.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst it might not be a question about the strategy, I am nonetheless very pleased to be able to address some of this opposition whataboutery head on. Because I think the equivocation and opposition we've seen to funding for Slowbottom Park, is as inexcusable, or is as inexplicable as it is inexcusable. We're talking about an investment of nearly £10 million in one of our most deprived communities. And on the one hand, we've got Green councillors claiming to be concerned that it will not be for the benefit of Marcos, but of course if they had their way there would be no investment and it wouldn't be for the benefit of anyone. So I want to focus on some of the facts to address some of those worries. I think we need to be clear. At the moment there are formal activities which can be booked and do incur a nominal charge, and that will remain the case. But there will be no reduction of informal sports activities and the availability of space for casual ball games and so on. We are not reducing any access to free activities in that park. I want to be absolutely clear about that, so there can be no misunderstanding and no worries further propagated by members of the opposition, sharing that news with members of the community. What is going to happen though is that we're going to be delivering a new cafe which is open to all. We'll be delivering a new community room which is free and open to all. We'll be delivering an accessible destination play area, again open to all. We'll be delivering new changing facilities, including one with a changing places facility, again open to all. Now, there will be benefits to Marlcross residents, which will be substantial, giving them the park that they deserve to suit their needs, but also the needs of people from the surrounding area, and putting, finally, Slowbottom Park on a par with all of the other exemplar parks in our fine city, including Eton, including Waterloo Park. And I've no doubt that the Leader of the Opposition will want to share that information far and wide and give this Labour administration the credit it deserves for what it's delivering, and correct any misapprehensions that the local community might be labouring under.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, that is unanimous. Item 10, approval for environmental projects. Could I ask Councillor Hampton, please, to move the report?
Thank you, and I'll be quick because this has come to Cabinet before recently. This is just, as you'll be able to see, a very short paper to sort out the delegations required to enable the Council to take necessary action to deliver two environmental projects, which are the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund Wave 3 and the Warm Homes Local Grant Funding. I'll just very quickly recap what those are about. We were successfully awarded from the government £12 million from the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund, which we're co-funding to achieve a project total of over £22 million. And this is set to deliver 1,400 solar PV systems, 140 air source heat pumps, and a ground source heat pump system as well. And then the Warm Homes Local Grant Funding, we successfully received £4.7 million from the government, which will go towards measures for 330 private sector homes, energy efficiency measures, low carbon heating, such as the heat pumps. So it's a really positive story for the council and the city. And as I say, this is just a very short few lines of a paper just to make sure those delegations that enable us to move forward are in place. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Harper. Does any Cabinet member wish to speak, please? Adam, and then Councillor Harper.
Yes, I was just going to say how fantastic this is and how much I welcome it, not, both for the environmental impact it will have and for the positive enhancement it will have for so many of our residents' lives, reducing their energy bills. It's fantastic we've secured this sum of money and provide a real tangible benefit to so many residents in Norwich.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Harper.
Absolutely. I want to fully endorse Councillor Giles' comments and say that I think lifting people out of fuel poverty is one of the most important things I think we can do as a local authority. It's an incredibly welcome piece of work, and I know it will benefit wards like Marlcross, wards like my own Lakenham, where we have a huge number of people living below the poverty line. And I just want to conclude by saying I think Councillor Hampton deserves a huge amount of credit for her leadership and tenacity in pursuing this agenda and making it a real political focus for our administration.
Here. Thank you, Councillor Harper. Does any other Cabinet member wish to speak? Councillor Jones.
I think it's awards like this make a real difference when we've got 14,000 properties in our housing stock, and when so many houses across the city need support. When we look at the HRA business plan, to meet the needs is such a significant task. So every award like this makes a significant difference, but also to other residents in privately owned stock as well. So it's. But I think what I'm really pleased is that it's meeting a diverse range of needs and just not focusing on one particular area. But I think it's the beginning of a challenge or ongoing challenge that we have to face. And I know there is such a commitment from Councillor Hampton and from the team she works with to continue to pursue every opportunity. And that's something I know the HRA will continue to do around. We've got to look for every source of funding to get the best outcome and the best homes for the city. And just thank you for bringing this forward.
Here. Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. I'll move now to questions from political group leaders that have been sent in advance. Councillor Catt, would you please ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. And I'd echo everything that everyone said. It's great to have these significant grants coming. Tackling fuel poverty is something I think everyone in council could agree is really, really important, and hopefully it will go some way to reducing some of the problems that will come about from the restriction for winter fuel payment that has come in from this government. Speaking specifically about private sector energy efficiency in the private rental market, something I've asked about before. The minimum EPC rating is set to increase to C, up from previously or currently E. The last data I received shows only 60% of the privately rented homes currently actually meet this standard, or that's 60% of privately rented homes currently don't meet that standard, with 6,457 properties currently above or at band C, and 9,563 falling into bands D to G. When I last asked about this, I wasn't really given much of an answer beyond that landlords need to take responsibility, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. We have some very, very bad landlords which need to take responsibility and need to be cracked down on. But that responsibility does sit with partially Norwich City Council as the enforcement authority. So my question is about what is going to be proactively done to ensure landlords meet these new energy efficiency standards, especially with this new award that we've been given.
So obviously questions need to relate directly to the content of the report.
Does it not?
As it's your first meeting, I'll accept it and we're going to respond that yes, it needs to directly relate to what's contained in the report. But I think
energy
we'll get you some advice.
Yeah, should I?
Go on, do you want to?
Yeah, as Mike says, it's your first meeting. We'll take the question. We've prepared a bit of a response, and I'll also pass a bit over to Councillor Jones, seeing as it's a regulatory function that sits in her portfolio. It's the report in front of us today is not just about the Warm Homes Grant, but actually a very specific short delegation, as I say, that just needs tidying up. This is about a much broader issue, not even about the kind of grants we're talking about, let alone the specific issue today. I'm not saying it's not an important issue, but the precedent is that we talk about the items in front of us really in this meeting. Yeah. But that's a very broad topic. We're talking about the Warm Homes Grants, which this isn't. However, I'll kind of give you what we've prepared, and as I say, Councillor Jones I think will have something to say on this as well. But previously, under the updated minimum energy efficiency standards, all rental properties were expected to have an EPC rating of C or above by 2025 for new tenancies and by 2028 for existing ones. This is a significant change from the current requirements of an E rating. The original proposal has been delayed and the government have yet to release full details of plans to increase EPC ratings. However, the proposed deadline of 2028 has been pushed back to 2030. Alongside the minimum energy efficiency standards regulations, the Housing Act 2004 provides the power to enforce minimum housing standards in the private rented sector using the Housing Health and Safety Rating System. The EPC rating of a property is not considered in isolation. Even if a property meets an EPC rating of E, landlords still need to provide adequate heating and thermal comfort. The council can still act when hazards, including excess cold, are identified in a property and not rectified. Ongoing work for our private housing service includes updating website guidance for landlords and tenants due by the end of June, procuring detailed stock condition survey and tenure intelligence modelling, which will give us property level information regarding hazards, including the energy efficiency profile, due by the end of the summer, developing a range of new policies and protocols, including a specific minimum energy efficiency standards policy to support enforcement of the regulations as part of wider service redesign of private sector housing and HMO enforcement due to be considered by Cabinet in October. And Beth, over to you.
I suppose first and foremost, I want to come back to the beginning of this, which is the responsibility sits with the landlord to have a safe home. Fundamentally, it is a business to them when it's someone's home. And our responsibility is around enforcement, and yes, that is it. But first and foremost, that landlord is making money out of that property, and they have a responsibility, one, to do it, but also to be aware of changes, and ignorance is no excuse. One of the things we are currently exploring is ways in which we work with landlords and forums that would support that. They do have very strong organisations locally, such as Eastern Landlord Association, and I'm sure they will be providing support and guidance. As you know, this is an area I've taken particular interest in since the beginning of my time as a Cabinet member, and I have a number of things in the pipeline that I'm not going to detail at this point because I wouldn't want to predetermine anything, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that to happen either, because we need to look at the best ways that we push forward to drive up standards across our private rented sector. And there's an awful lot of work that's gone on from when I initially brought the suggestion to Council that we undertake the stock condition survey, and we are now in process with that. So I look forward to where that guides us, and that any steps we take will be evidence-based. And I think that there are a number of different ways that we look to address, and it's partially around potentially our role around enforcement, but it's also around how we work productively with the better landlords. There are some good landlords, there are some very bad landlords, and there are some in the middle, and we need to be supporting those to be compliant. So that's around information, and that's not just sits with us, that sits more on a national level as well. So I think there's a number of different solutions to this, and it will be something that we will be revisiting repeatedly, because we put private rented sector funding foremost.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So we'll now move to a vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 11, delegated authority to award 4 HRA maintenance contracts. Could I ask Councillor Jones, please, to move the report?
Thank you. As I'm sure you can't remember, we are currently going through a large procurement exercise at the moment for 2 new main contractors for the HRA, which is an exciting process, and I look forward to updating you on that. Because we're really committed to the long-term investment in our housing stock, and that the contracts I'm bringing to you today we're talking relatively short-term comparatively. Our focus in the HRA moving forward will be about long-term planning, because particularly when you're spending capital, you need to be able to plan over a longer term. But certain things can't wait, and we want to make sure we have business as usual continuity. So these 4 contracts are kind of interim, and we plan for those to be incorporated in the larger plans going forward. And where possible to ensure continuity, with other things that I've brought to you previously, we've looked to extend contracts, but these are 4 cases where we're not in a position to do that, so we're procuring new providers to bridge the gap and to ensure that we continue to have the right people on board to support the work we do on tenants' homes. There's not much more I'm going to that. I think this is a part of a tidying up process in that sense, that we don't want things not to be completed just because we're waiting on a larger contract. There are certain things that are too important to put on pause, so these fill that gap.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hampton. Does any Cabinet member wish to speak on this item? No, in which case I'll move to questions from political group leaders that have been sent in advance. Councillor Catt, would you please ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was glad to see an award for the estate aesthetics budget in there. I think it's on behalf of everyone that's been able to successfully get a proposal delivered. It is a really, really great idea, and it's a great thing that the Council does. Historically, though, the budget has been underspent in many years, and I don't think that's due to a lack of need across many estates. I did request data on how many projects had been proposed and delivered over the last couple of years compared to the budget, and I was told that that information would be given to me. I was then told that it wouldn't then be given to me, and it would be given to me at a later date. Can you answer the question now and explain any disparity between the money that has been spent on the estates and what was budgeted, just to make sure that the money that is being awarded now, which is great, can actually be delivered.
Councillor Jones.
I know that a request has been made by the councillor for this information. Obviously, to receive that request, and the information will be collated, including detailing budgets and actual spend with a summary of works. I've no awareness of any data being withheld, and any queries can be discussed. I am committed to ensuring there's a consistent and robust approach to allocating the estate aesthetics budget, and I've asked officers to develop a clear methodology, and I'll be happy to share this in due course, because I think how we allocate that is crucial, and it needs to have a clear, transparent set of rationales behind that. And also look where it sits alongside other money that's being spent, because actually the estate aesthetics might not always be the most appropriate pot, but it's looking at where it's going to make an impact. And there are some areas that already had money spent, and actually how do we, but also it's about where it might work effectively alongside other funding. So it's always about trying to get best value. It's something that I have to say, it's something I've been looking at more recently. Yes, it is something that is important to residents, but I think we have to think about looking at things like repairs and maintenance as priorities, and I am, as we've talked about, really asking officers to do a lot more with a lot less, if we're honest. So yes, it is something that we're looking at, but on the hierarchy, for me, it's important because it improves people's life experience, but we've got to get the basic, we've got to work on those basic things as priorities as well. So it sits alongside those. I wouldn't say it's not a priority, but it's something that I'm discussing.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 12 is exclusion of the public. I will move that we exclude the press and public from the meeting during the consideration of items on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as specified in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, or it being confidential for the purposes of Section 100A2 of that Act. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hampton, thank you. We now move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Goodbye to our public.